The start of the NBA season is almost already upon us. Before the season starts, I think it would be proper to try and predict some of the major awards before the season, something that would be fun. This episode comes out as an awkward time because most of the NBA season is going to be well underway by the time the next show comes out. I'm recording these Sundays, probably posting them late Sunday, so you have it for the week starting Monday. That's kind of my goal with this. Anyways, I think it would be fun to just try and look at, who we think might be the MVP or the Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, DPOY, Most Improved, Sixth Man. You get the idea. There's a lot of awards, and we're going to talk about that, as well as at some point I want to talk about starting five, and I can't decide whether I love it or hate it, so stay tuned for those two conversations. At some point when these videos actually start getting actual views, I will do timestamps, but I am too lazy. And so that's just me. I'm sorry. I think it actually makes more sense to start off with the review of starting five, just because I'm not, first of all the way through it. I know what the content of the show is. It's just a recap of the NBA season. So we're going to watch the playoffs, Anthony Edwards take over. We're going to watch Jason Tatum, win the NBA Finals with the Boston Celtics. So I have kind of a rough idea of what the show is. I'm probably halfway through right now, 5 episodes in. It's been interesting for sure. Something that I've always had a problem with Netflix, and someone else pointed this out on Twitter a while ago, but it's just reality TV or just TV in general, shows in general, but mainly reality TV and or the stuff on Netflix is a lot of stuff that you feel like this is 20 minutes of information that's kind of being embellished. And I don't know if that's an opinion that everybody shares, but I feel like personally that starting five doesn't have a lot to justify a 10 episode, 45-minute episode season. They highlighted what they wanted to highlight, and I think it's cool to look into these people's lives a little bit. Obviously, that's kind of the point of the show. I guess I was hoping for more insider content than you were really getting. Is it crazy of me to say that NBA players are just kind of boring? They're just kind of regular people? I don't mean that in an offensive way. I just mean that, they're regular dudes. You know what I mean? That just also happen to be freakishly athletic and, insanely good at basketball. But I just feel like what I was hoping for out of the show was maybe, more basketball related. My thoughts on this topic really aren't more than half baked, so I apologize if this isn't coming out the right way. I just personally believe that when you have this type of opportunity to get this coverage for NBA behind the scenes access, that I just feel like they took the low hanging fruit. I think there's a lot of things that in the show are important, right? Kids, family, all that's super important, but it's all kind of just NBA player common knowledge stuff. Other than Jimmy Butler's kids, I did not know Jimmy Butler had kids. He seems like a really cool dad, so shout out to Jimmy Butler for that. I think the show really is for people who forget that athletes are human beings and, that they have kids and lives outside of it. And also something that I'm hoping that the show talks about a little bit is the impact these players have on their communities. Because you're looking at a guy who has just a ton of money in an area, and they give back a lot. Jaylen Brown does a lot of charity work, as does Jason Tatum, I know, in Boston. They create programs. LeBron always gives back to his local community. I think he built a new high school, if I'm not mistaken. And, all kinds of charity work gets done. So I hope they highlight that type of stuff too, the philanthropic side of the NBA, I guess. So I don't know. I just kind of don't like the presentation. I'm kind of being a hater, and I'm not trying to ruin it. I don't really know what the consensus is on this, so I don't know if people are going to be mad that I don't really like starting five, or if they're yeah, dude, this show sucks. Why are you even trying to act like it's decent? So I have no idea what the public perception of it is. I've just been watching it. It's okay, but it's not this amazing show. I was kind of excited for it, but I don't know. It's just a TV show. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's a TV show that is way longer than it should be, and Netflix is trying to steal your time. That's just really what it is. It's what it boils down to. So at the end of the day, I am probably going to finish it just because I want to see them document Jason Tatum holding up the, Larry O'Brien. So it's more just about me being a Celtics homer than it is me actually enjoying the show. So I don't know. I might talk about it more. I might not. It's probably overdone at this point. Point is the show is cool. And if you like to, know more about any of those five guys, that's a way to learn. I learned a lot more about Domantas Sabonis' family than I ever thought I could. and his wife is ride or die for him. So lucky man right there. Gotta love those supportive wives. Am I right? I'm just going to start off with the most important award, MVP. And I've had a really hard time trying to predict this. The obvious option feels like Luka, right? I think Luka is a great basketball player. I think if the Mavs are a top 2 or 3 seed in the West, Luka probably wins MVP because he's probably going to be putting up a 30-point plus triple-double. That's really hard to root against that. But I don't know, man. It just, my gut, and part of it is my Celtics fandom. I'm not going to pretend that it isn't, but I just feel like it's Jason Tatum's year. It just is. It just feels like it. After last year, he didn't get conference finals MVP, even though he averaged 30, 10, and 6 through the series, had a ton of big shots. I get it. Jaylen Brown played great. And in the finals, too, Jaylen Brown played well, as did Tatum. And anyone who says that he didn't is just efficiency watching. I mean, that's crazy to me. You got guys like Kobe that are all-time greats that won at that level because they were part of a team and part of a system. But with Jason Tatum, he's just going to be called a role player, even though he is the entirety of the Celtics' identity, and his versatility as a player is exactly why they're so dominant. But whatever. It's fine. I'm so salty about it. I don't care. Anyway, the reason that I would say Jason Tatum's going to win MVP is not only the Team USA getting benched. I don't think he is motivated exclusively by one thing, but you hear the interviews and you hear that he is obviously, trying to grind. He's trying to win another championship. And Boston's going to have to go until Christmas at least without Kristaps Porzingis. So Jason Tatum's going to have that offensive load. And I do think that he's probably not going to average 40 points a game, but I do think he's going to be the center of attention, more so than he already was. And yeah, you lose someone in Porzingis that can handle the offensive load, but I think you've got guys on the team who can step up. I think Jason Tatum's playmaking is going to be at an all-time high. I do like Jrue Holiday and Derek White, but I think we're going to see an unlocked version of Tatum just doing it all. I think he's going to do a lot of good things on defense as well. And if the Celtics have an insanely good record, it's going to be really hard to not pick Tatum to win the MVP. I think they'd have to win 70 games for him to be the MVP, for sure. But if he can average, 28, 11, and 6.5, those are pretty good numbers, right? Giannis won MVP with those numbers. So if Jason Tatum does that and they win 70 games, missing time with their third best player. And you can make the argument about Jrue Holiday and Derek White and who's more valuable. ESPN seems to think that Porzingis is the worst of the starting 5, but I just think at the end of the day, Boston is going to need some extra bit from Jason Tatum, as well as the fact that they're a pretty stacked roster. Jason Tatum has the ability here to win MVP. It's all up to him. He's the only one stopping himself. If the Celtics seriously win 70 games and Jason Tatum is averaging insane bonkers numbers, that's going to be enough to put him over the top, in my opinion. I also could absolutely see someone like Shea winning the MVP this year. At the end of the day, these are just predictions. I don't seriously think, this isn't what I would bet money on, but I do think that it's entirely possible that this is the year we see a Jason Tatum MVP. Just historically speaking, I feel like this is something that he wants. And I don't know if I'm right about that or not, and I guess we'll just have to see. But I feel like he wants to be an MVP. Obviously, he wants to be a finals MVP, and obviously it's not going to dictate how he plays. I just think the way that the team is going to play is going to allow Jason Tatum to average MVP numbers. Next up, we're going to look at Rookie of the Year, and this award is a little hard to predict given how bonkers the draft class is. I don't know if bonkers is the right word. I think my lack of melanin showed a little bit there. But let's say Chicago blows it up and Matas Buzelis is going off every night, right? He has a Brandon Miller type rookie year. And Brandon Miller seriously was super underrated last year as a rookie. I know you had Chet and Wemby at the top of the discussion. Jaime Jaquez kind of was in that third spot to start the year, which it's so funny to me too when you look at rookies, people talking about Dalton Connect, how he goes off and he's an immediate production guy. That's what you get out of the 23, 24-year-old college guys. Anybody, you look at Peyton Pritchard too, same type of deal. He had a really good rookie year, but he hasn't improved a ton off of that. He's kind of just that player. And once you start to see a guy around 23, 24, 25, 26, that's when you can start to see like what a player is really capable of. And when you have a rookie, there's not a ton of ceiling there when they're, coming out of college at 23. So you look at a guy like Brandon Miller and Jaime Jaquez, people are like, oh, Jaime Jaquez is better than Brandon Miller. Like, yeah, maybe. I still don't think so. But at the beginning of their rookie year, Jaime Jaquez might have been better for a couple months than Brandon Miller. But you see my point. My point with it is just that I am going to pick Alex Sarr. That's how I was trying to set up the point, and I kind of just failed on the execution, so I'm sorry. But Alex Sarr is my pick to win Rookie of the Year. I think he is in a really good situation in Washington, meaning a horrible situation that is going to force him to be the guy. But they got Valanciunas, so he gets to play the 4 like he wants to. He's going to be a really good defensive player. Seriously, I'm expecting big things out of him. Maybe not Wemby-level stats on the blocks, but I'm expecting some good defensive stats. He's clearly going to have to, polish up the offensive game just a little bit. But I think he can, shoot the ball pretty well. I think that he just has the most opportunity to kind of take over and be the guy. Like, if I look at the situation he's walking into, it's very Wemby-like in how Wemby walks on the Spurs last year. Not a ton of surrounding talent, definitely a big hole to fill. We'll see how it goes. Speaking of Victor Wembanyama, he is my pick for the Defensive Player of the Year award. I think that Victor Wembanyama is just going to be a dominant defensive player. That's going to be something that happens for the rest of his career. I think that the awards people have kind of decided that AD or, Bam Adebayo, guys like that, just aren't going to get a DPOY. I don't know why, but the voters seem to just ignore those two and their accomplishments, where I feel like Bam and AD are the defensive anchors of their respected teams. If AD plays a lot of games, Lakers are good on their interior defense. It's always been the closeouts for them. They need to make sure that they attack the closeouts a little bit harder, a little bit more effort. But other than that, I feel like their rotations are the only thing that need work. So for the Lakers, my point being is that AD is their entire defensive force, as Bam Adebayo can guard pretty much any position. He's a phenomenal player. He's a good rim protector. He's fast enough to stay with quicker wings, but he's also strong enough to stay down low underneath with centers. Obviously, he didn't look great against Jokic in the finals 2 years ago, but it's Nikola Jokic. You know what I mean? Regardless, I think the way that the award is leaning right now is probably Wemby, right? Because last year it was Gobert, if I'm not mistaken. I think Wemby was slightly behind. And that was just because his team was so garbage that the defensive stats were a little inflated. Realistically, people are going to stop trying to drive on Wemby as much, and he's going to change how teams play around him. But seeing that impact is definitely Defensive Player of the Year level impact. And he's obviously humongous. He's obviously got long, wingspan. He's great shot blocker. I mean, he's just a freak athlete. And he's a freak human being, too. He's just so much bigger than everyone else that I just feel like his versatility on that end is unmatched. So I would say, yeah, I'm absolutely comfortable taking that kind of a favorite. I don't like picking favorites, if you couldn't already tell. Although Sarr might be the betting favorite, so maybe Tatum is my one dark horse selection that I'm just going to be, letting my Celtics bias creep in just a tad. I don't know. I mean, DPOY is hard to predict. It's really all about narratives. That's what all of these awards are, and that's kind of my point. Is are the national media going to let Jason Tatum win MVP? Probably not. Are the national media going to let Anthony Davis or Bam Adebayo win DPOY? Right? That's the question. Is there a narrative that's compelling enough that these awards voters are going to be swayed by? Because the talent at the league is just at an all-time high. You've got so many different players producing that it just makes these awards really, really hard to dictate and hard to guess. Going with another favorite here, Dante DiVincenzo for Sixth Man of the Year. I think Dante is an amazing player. I think it's crazy that the Knicks traded him. I do understand the Randall trade now a little bit more than I did in the last episode. Obviously, we talked about it, but I just think when you look at Dante DiVincenzo, I understand that Naz Reid is also a Sixth Man of the Year type candidate, but I just feel like Dante is ready to kill. He has the mentality. He knows what type of player he is. I feel like he's going to be comfortable shooting the ball. I think him and Anthony Edwards are going to play really well together, and I feel like you're going to see him maybe shift into the starting lineup. Maybe not. We'll see. It really all depends on the regression of Mike Conley. If Mike Conley can be serviceable, DiVincenzo can be the first man off the bench type of guy. He's not really a guy that you want handling the ball full time, but he can be a secondary ball handler for sure off the bench. I feel like his usage is going to be a little bit higher. He may still be a bench guy, but I think he's probably going to play like 25, 28 minutes a night. So I could definitely see him winning the Sixth Man of the Year award. This is another one that it's kind of hard to know, but I think Dante still has a lot left in the tank and a lot left to prove. Definitely a chip on the shoulder, so it'll be interesting to see what he does this year. Next up, I'm going to talk about the Most Improved Player award, which my prediction is going to be Jalen Johnson. I think Jalen Johnson has a really high ceiling in this league. I think he is the prototypical kind of wing player. If he can establish defensive upside there and really just be an athlete, I think he's going to be, miles ahead of the pack from what people are expecting out of him. I'm really high on him, obviously, as you can tell. I don't think he's obviously a top, 20 player right now, but I think that his size and skill set really just allow him to be moldable into that way, and I think he complements Trae Young really well. He's not necessarily a guy that you need to be a full-time ball handler. I think Johnson can play really well off Trae Young. It'll be interesting to see what they do, but after you lose DeJounte Murray, you're really looking for star power and people to step up, and I just don't think Reece Shea is that guy. I think Reece Shea is a 3-and-D guy. He's got good upside for sure, but I think of him more as a catch-and-shoot guy that kind of plays off of Young and Jalen Johnson. I hope that I'm right about this. I did check the betting odds on this one because I was just trying to think of who would even be a Most Improved Player candidate, but I feel like the void of DeJounte Murray really adds for some growth for Jalen Johnson along with his just development in general. Kind of like how you see Maxey after Harden's gone. After James Harden leaves the Sixers, and then you look at Tyrese Maxey's jump, into a basically 28 point per game player, I think you could maybe not expect that much out of Jalen Johnson, but you could definitely expect a sizable leap in his contributions. The final award I'm going to pick here is the Coach of the Year, which has always been a really difficult award for me to predict, mainly because Coach of the Year does not mean best coach in the NBA. What it means is a coach who that season made some big, turnaround for their team, who's kind of coming in and is clearly making an impact. It's another narrative-based award, but the Thunder's coach last year, I think it's Mark Daigneault. It is Mark Daigneault. Why did I doubt my ball knowledge? I don't think the national media is going to give Joe Mazzulla Coach of the Year. I do think last year's playoffs showed that Joe Mazzulla has Coach of the Year potential, but I just don't think at the end of the day that unless they win a billion games, you'd have to probably win 75 for Joe Mazzulla to be Coach of the Year. And this one is definitely a dark horse for sure, but I'm going to go Mike Budenholzer. I know it's crazy, but he already won a Coach of the Year with the Bucks. And I really like the way that the Suns are playing offense in the preseason. The ball is moving. It's not a lot of ISO. Their offensive scheme is a lot more creative. Definitely, better for the role players, but also better for the stars. KD and Book and Beal. Obviously, they have Tyus Jones now. You've got a lot of guys that can create. So if you can do kind of how the Warriors used to play when they had Kevin Durant, a type of a situation in Phoenix, I think Phoenix could seriously shock everyone and be a top 3 seed. It all comes down to health, and there's a lot of talent in the West. You've got the Thunder, you've got the, even the friggin' Pelicans are a really, really good team. Obviously, I should not have mentioned them second, but seriously, the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the Suns, you have the Lakers, you have the Pelicans, you have the Mavericks, obviously, who just went to the conference finals. If I didn't say the Nuggets, I'm really sorry. Thunder, as I've already said, this conference is stacked. So it's going to be crazy to try and predict who the Coach of the Year is going to be. I think Chris Finch is another guy that you could look at and say, oh, maybe, if the Timberwolves become the 1 seed and, the Julius Randle experiment works in the regular season, I could definitely see Chris Finch. That's probably the better pick, but I'm sticking to my guns. I think Phoenix is just really, really good, and I think that Mike Budenholzer has always been able to win a lot of games. I don't think the Suns are going to be in the NBA Finals, but but I do think that they can win a lot of regular season games with Mike Budenholzer. I like the scheme that they're probably going to run here, and that's why I'm going to say that he's, my Coach of the Year prediction. So I kind of ran through this episode a lot faster than I was expecting to, just because we have a lot of time here that I wasn't expecting to have. I'm also going to do a prediction of what the NBA Finals is going to be and who the winner is going to be. So I'm going to say the Celtics are going to come out of the East for sure. They're definitely going to make the finals again. I think Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum at this point have more playoff experience than anybody you're going to see, and they have equal playoff success of any other team in the Eastern Conference, if not, substantially more, right? So if they're playing Miami, if they're playing Milwaukee, they've still got the experience edge over those guys. And at the end of the day, the talent as well. The West is hard. The West is really hard to predict. I do think that we might see a little fall off from the Nuggets. Not anything crazy. They're easily going to win 50 games, but I don't know if they'll be atop the conference, but we'll see. It depends what Christian Braun is able to do. Guys like Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, what they're able to do in some extra minutes, a little bit higher of a role. But, the Thunder, the Wolves, these are teams that I think are probably going to make the finals next year. I could definitely see the Wolves making the finals next season, and I did make a bet on that. I signed up for DraftKings and put $5 down, and I got a whole bunch of free bets. So I was trying to do that for the last episode, but it didn't let me bet on multiple parlays. You can't put a team win over under in a parlay. It's only single bets. So the stacked odds would have been too much. But I'm going to say that the Timberwolves experiment is going to work. I think at the end of the day, they have just enough scoring if Dante DiVincenzo is that guy. And you've got Naz Reid. Obviously, you still have Randall. Randall has been a playoff dropper for sure, but he was also the number one guy. And, Anthony Edwards is going to take a lot of shots. And if Anthony Edwards can make a lot of shots, this is already going to be a really good defensive team. You know what I mean? Conley is, but you've got Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels. You've also got, Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert as your starting five. And then, great contributors off the bench. The bench is what matters in the playoffs. I do think the Thunder have a really good bench, but I do think at the same time, the Thunder are a team that can get shut down. You look at Luka and the Mavs. Luka didn't get shut down on the stat sheet. He still got his points. I think Shea could get his points, but if you're going to let Shea go off, I think you can clamp pretty much everyone else. Gobert can shut down Holmgren. Randall can shut down J-Dub, as could Jaden McDaniels. You've got a lot of talent there. And I just think the Timberwolves team is ready. I think they've made the moves. We'll see if the chemistry works or not, but I have to go Boston meeting Minnesota in the finals this year. That's just my gut feeling. We'll see what happens. As for the winner of that finals, I got to go with the Boston Celtics. I'm never going to bet against them, and especially when they just are coming off that championship. They dominated all their way to the finals. They dominated the finals. Everyone, you can say whatever you want, right, about their path to the finals. They took the Dallas Mavericks, the team that beat the defending champions, okay? They played some talent to get there, and there weren't any injuries on the West side. For the most part, I would say Dallas's run is pretty legitimate, and it was a bad matchup for them, for sure. It made Boston look a lot better than Boston was just because of how easily exploitable the Mavs' flaws were, and it just was a mismatch the whole way, right? They didn't have anybody to, play defense. Luka couldn't, stop a friggin' traffic cone rolling down a hill, dude. It was bad. My point being is that the Celtics may not be as dominant as they looked this year, but they were pretty dominant in spite of the injury to Kristaps Porzingis, and I just think at the end of the day, this team is going back-to-back. I think we're looking at a generational team here. We're looking at the first dynasty since we have had, the Warriors? So it's been a good 5 years without a dynasty. I think we're ready for another one. I think it's time that we have, a repeat champion, first time back-to-back since the Warriors did it. Point being is that I think that the Boston Celtics are going to be the next dynasty, and that starts with them winning this championship, going back-to-back, and hopefully three-peating the year after. I don't think that anyone can mess with their roster. Although Minnesota would be a really, really good test. Again, Minnesota is one that I feel like is either going to have a really disappointing year or is going to like overperform somehow, like mid 60 wins. And I don't know which, but I just think that the team as constructed is playoff ready. They match up well with anybody, and that's kind of the same things that I like about Boston. So that's why I think they're going to make the finals, and I also think that Boston would win that finals pretty convincingly, I'd say in 6 games if I had to guess. All right, I just quickly on the fly threw together like 5 hot takes. You might not think these are hot takes. I think they're pretty bad, some of them. I think they have the potential to age, at least 1 or 2 of them, as badly as a take has ever aged. I'm talking Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd level of bad take, all right? But bear with me, because I think it could be fun, and I think my gut could be right about one of these, and hitting on one of these would feel pretty cool. So my first hot take is that the Heat are going to miss the playoffs. Now, I don't mean that they're going to miss the play-in. I think they'll easily be a top 10 seed. But I think injuries have been a problem. Jimmy Butler's getting older. Maybe he even gets traded at the deadline. Scary, who knows? I just don't really like the odds of the Heat competing in this Eastern Conference. And I know that's crazy to say because they are a really, really good basketball team. But they just can't stay healthy. Like Tyler Herro misses time. Jimmy Butler doesn't even take the regular season that seriously. Hopefully they come out, and make a statement because they're going to have to. Like, seriously, they're going to have to. At the end of the day, I think the Miami Heat probably do make the playoffs. I don't know how much I believe this, but if I have to give a hot take, I really do think that there's a possibility of it. And the Heat have been on a downward trend the last few years. Health has always been an issue. Nobody's really talking about it, but Jimmy is coming off like a rough injury. So we'll see. He's getting up there. I know that we look at these guys like Steph and LeBron and KD, and they're still balling at their old ages, but I don't know. Something about the Heat just feels like they might be, just mid. I think they, lose in the 9th seed playoff, play-in game or whatever. I just think the East is really competitive right now. You've got Boston, you've got Milwaukee, you've got the Knicks, you've got the Cavs, the Magic, the Pacers. All those teams have a right to say that they're at the Heat's level or better. And I know I left somebody off. I just can't think who that was. But if any team that made the playoffs last year is going to miss it this year completely, I have to look at, the Miami Heat as potentially one of those teams. Another hot take about Eastern Conference seeding, I don't think the Knicks are going to be a top 3 seed in the East. By the way, so sorry to Philly fans. I did not mean to leave them out, but that's a 7th team. That is a better roster than Miami. And, you look at teams like Philly and Milwaukee, teams that have a lot of talent. Talent wins in the regular season. And I know that the Knicks are all the boys, the Villanova boys. But at the end of the day, the Boston Celtics have been together. They're going to win a lot of games this year. And they're bringing back the same group they just had. When you shake things up, a lot of the time it takes a while to get ahead, get a head start. Where I think Paul George already looks like he's going to start off the season slowly, but there's a lot of talent there. And I think that everybody kind of knows their role on that team because the tier of player is very, sequential. Like Joel Embiid is the clear-cut best player, Maxey the clear-cut second best player, Paul George the clear-cut third best. You know what I'm saying? I think that makes roles a lot easier to define. I think Nick Nurse is a great coach, and he could easily get them to a top seed as long as Embiid doesn't miss more than 30 games. And I also like Milwaukee, the full season of Doc Rivers getting able to, coach them up. I think there's a lot of talent there. I think Dame, getting an off season to train. If they come in with the right mindset, I think Milwaukee could easily be a top 4 seed. Milwaukee is a really hard team to predict just because they are getting older and they're a very old team. They lost some players, but at the end of the day, they've got what they've got. And I think they've got a lot of top-end talent. Chris Middleton's obviously going to miss time. They're the Milwaukee Bucks. What else is new? You know what I mean? Bobby Portis is a good player. Brooke Lopez is definitely aging, for sure. But I like the Milwaukee Bucks. I still think they're a talented team, and I think they could win more regular season games than the New York Knicks. I don't know if that's crazy. I don't love the Knicks' bench, which probably doesn't mean a whole lot in the regular season because Tibbs plays his starters a ton anyway. That's probably going to be more of a playoff implication thing. But I don't know. There's just something about the team that feels kind of like how when the 76ers traded Jimmy Butler for Josh Richardson, and everyone was like, oh, shoot, like, this is an even better team because they signed Al Horford. But it's like, dude, come on. Like, you lost Jimmy Butler. So I don't know if, like, that comparison makes sense. I mean, like, they played without Randall last year and won a lot of games. And this take is the one that is the hottest, that I believe the least, probably. I still do think that the New York Knicks could have trouble, figuring things out. I also think Brunson is definitely a good player. He's a high-volume player. You traded a ton for Mikal Bridges, and you also lose Isaiah Hartenstein. So there's definitely a minimized defensive presence there in the underneath. Obviously, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart are all great perimeter defenders. And Cat is not like some, slouch in the paint, but he's just not somebody that I consider like an elite rim protector necessarily. Although him playing center versus power forward probably keeps him off the perimeter, so maybe he gets to camp in the paint and, be more of that, rim protecting kind of guy. We'll have to see how they use him. It's all really up to Thibodeau. And I do think the Knicks are a great basketball team, but I think that there's a good chance that they're the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. When I was thinking about this, initially I was like, Steph Curry gets traded at the deadline. And I don't think the Warriors will ever trade Steph Curry. I also don't know where they would trade Steph Curry to and what they could possibly get. Because realistically, if you're trading Steph Curry, you should get a Mikal Bridges-like package for him. Like, it's Steph Curry. I don't care. We just saw him in the Olympics. It's Steph Curry, okay? If Golden State is going to do that, then, you know what I mean? Like, they have better get a haul for him. So I think that's a little less realistic. I think he's probably either going to at least walk when his contract is up or more likely retire a Warrior. I think that he values that and they value that, and he's won enough in his career. I don't think he needs to add anything to cement his legacy. So when I look at the Steph Curry realistic, like, he's not getting traded. You know what I mean? But off of that, I was thinking about Draymond Green, and I really think Draymond Green has pushed the buttons. I don't think he pushed Clay out, but he obviously punched Jordan Poole, ruined the chemistry there, definitely broke up what could have been another title contending team. I think this season it's just going to be, too much. Last season he obviously had to, take some time away. He got suspended, I believe, but it might have just been by the Warriors. I don't really remember the details of that situation. And I know that they re-signed him and whatever, but I think it's just going to hit a boiling point. I just think that if there's a time that Draymond is going to get traded, it's probably right now. Again, I know that they paid him. I know that him and Steph are boys. I know that you're not allowed to do that. But if they're going to blow it up in try and maximize what assets they have, maybe Kuminga and, Green go somewhere else. Who knows? It's a hot take. It's probably not going to happen, but it would be really, really interesting to see how much it takes to get Draymond Green to not be a Warrior. I mean, you'd think he'd have to actually kill someone. And I'm not predicting that because I don't want to pretend that he would murder someone. This is definitely the most mild take that I have, but it's that Cade is going to have a breakout year. And what I mean by that is he's going to average 25 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. That's a breakout year for him. I also mean that he needs to stay healthy. He's going to play 60, 70 games. And I also don't think that the Pistons are going to be bad. I don't think they're going to be playoff easily. But I do see a world where maybe they sneak in around 10. Maybe they get to 11 or 12. They're not going to be a great team. But new coach, new culture. It's a little interesting. I'm not going to lie. I don't know how I feel about it totally. But we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the Cavs fired him, and now the Pistons have him. It's a little hard to want to pick that stuff up off the trash heap. You know what I mean? Oh, this guy got thrown out. Let's hire him. I don't know what that really does. Everybody gets fired for a reason, but I do think that the grit and grind culture is interesting. It's definitely an intriguing thing, and I feel like the Pistons are due for at least a mediocre season, especially with a lot of the regression of some of the bottom feeders in the East. I think the Pistons have a chance to at least kind of get to mid. The final hot take that I have is that the Boston Celtics are going to win 70 or more games. Last year, I believe they won 64 64-18, I believe, was their record last year. I believe that was a league high record. I know it's going to be rough with depth at the center position, but I really do think that the Celtics are just going to keep rolling. You have the chemistry of last year. It kind of reminds me of the Golden State Warriors when they won their championship against an injured Cavs team. Obviously, the injuries that the Celtics benefited from were along the way to the finals, not in the finals. They actually had Kristaps Porzingis miss time in the finals and still won in 5 games. But I look at that and I look at the way people react, and it reminds me of how people reacted when the Warriors won the championship in 2015. So before they blew the 3-1 lead, right? So I think that the Celtics genuinely could win 70 games. I think the chemistry's there. I think they're locked in. I think Joe Mazzulla is a great coach. I'm not saying they're going to break the wins record. I think more likely it would be 70 on the dot, and that would be a generationally good season. And maybe they come up short, get 68, 69 wins, but they're going to be high 60s and hopefully into the 70s on those wins. I can absolutely guarantee that. Unless, somebody else gets injured and misses like a ton of time, I just don't see a world where this Boston Celtics team doesn't continue to dominate the way that they did last year. I feel like I stat padded the episode long enough. I don't really have a ton else to talk about. I'm really excited for opening night, getting to watch New York and Boston square off. I'm glad that we get to see that game on Tuesday. And, at the end of the day, NBA's back. And I'm really, really excited for it. If you agree or disagree with any of these takes, if you have, the urge to share your own opinions, absolutely do that in the comments below. I should probably say this stuff at the beginning of the video when people are still watching, but if you are watching right now, at the end, email me, send me something or write a comment below. I really like engaging with you guys, kind of hearing what you guys have for thoughts on things. I think it's really fun to talk basketball with people. So if you're a basketball kind of guy or kind of girl, I guess, I'm pretty sure my viewership is like 99.9% male and then my girlfriend. But let me know what your thoughts on any of these awards are, what your predictions might be. Leave that in the comments below. Also, email me any questions you want to talk about, and I'll talk about it on the podcast. And without further ado, I will catch you all in the next one. Take care.